Hello and welcome to Tian Finance. Now, Bob retired at 65 with 10 million rand invested and a debt-free home worth 4 million. And most people would assume he was financially set for life. But he actually wasn't. You see, when I modeled the retirement he actually wanted, 50,000 rand per month after tax, regular travel and 3 future vehicle purchases, his ideal lifestyle became unaffordable at age 72, just 7 years after retiring. Now, even increasing his assumed investment return from 10% to 12% didn't add a single year to that lifestyle longevity. But after working through 7 financial planning decisions, we extended the same retirement plan from age 72 to age 96 without changing Bob's starting wealth. In this video, I'm taking you inside the financial planning process and even software to show you how exactly we did it and why the amount you retire with is only one part of the answer in your financial plan. Now, this case is based on an actual client I work with. However, his name is not Bob. I've changed his name, personal circumstances, asset values, and certain other details to protect his identity. And the purpose of this video is not to tell you what Bob should have done, it's to show you how several seemingly small decisions can interact and completely change the outcome of a particular retirement plan, and maybe even your retirement plan. Now let's look at Bob's starting position. He's 65 and he just retired. He has the following investment assets. So he has a pension fund worth 7 million, he's got a tax-free savings account worth 1 million, and a unit trust worth about 2 million. That gives him a total investment portfolio of 10 million rand. For this projection, we assume that all of his investments grow at 10% per year, net of investment fees. And for his liquid investments, such as the unit trusts, the assumed return also made provision for tax on the underlying investment growth, including dividends, interest, and capital gains. Now, the 10% return is a planning assumption, not a future guaranteed return. Obviously, your actual investment returns will also not occur in a perfectly straight line because nothing in life ever does occur in a perfectly straight line. Bob also owns a debt-free property worth 4 million, which he actually bought for 2 million back in the day. We assume that that property grows at 5% per year. And this means that Bob's overall financial position is actually larger than just the 10 million. However, his investable retirement assets are 10 million, while the value in his home is initially tied up as a lifestyle asset. And that distinction becomes extremely important later on in the plan, as you'll see if you stick around. Now let's look at the retirement that Bob wants. Before we can determine whether 10 million is actually enough, we need to understand what Bob wants his actual retirement to look like. Now, Bob wants 50,000 rand per month after tax to cover his normal living expenses. We assume that this income requirement would go up every year by 5% to cater for inflation. And he also wants to purchase 3 vehicles during retirement. The first vehicle would actually be purchased immediately at age 65, the second at age 75, and the third at age 85. And each vehicle is assumed to cost about 500,000 rand after tax, in today's money increasing in future with 5% every year. Now, Bob also loves traveling around South Africa, particularly visiting the Kruger National Park and other wildlife destinations, and he wants to spend 100,000 rand after tax on travel every year until the age of 80, with this amount also being adjusted for 5% every year. Longevity also runs in Bob's family, with both his parents still being alive in their late 80s. We therefore do not want to build a plan that merely gets Bob into his early 80s. Ideally, we want the plan to provide for at least his mid to late 90s. And those are the goals against which this plan actually has to be measured. Now, at retirement, Bob decides to take only the first 550,000 rand of his pension fund as a lump sum. Now, under the retirement lump sum tax table used in this plan, that amount is actually tax-free. Bob doesn't want to take more than the 550,000 because he wants to avoid paying any tax on the lump sum above the tax-free amount. That leaves him with about 6.45 million invested into a living annuity. Bob also wants to draw the minimum income of 2.5% from this living annuity because he believes that this will keep his income tax as low as possible. And at a 2.5% drawdown, this will give him about 13,437 Rand per month before tax. And based on the tax calculation used in the plan at the time of recording this video, his tax will only be about 120 Rand, leaving him with about 13,300 Rand after tax. Now, at first glance, this actually looks very tax efficient. Bob has only taken the tax-free portion of his retirement capital, his living annuity income is low, and he's paying almost no income tax whatsoever. But Bob needs 50,000 Rand per month after tax. The difference between the income from his living annuity and the 50,000 Rand he needs must therefore be funded from his liquid investments, his tax-free savings account, his unit trust. His holidays and vehicle purchase must also be funded from that liquid capital. So let's see what actually happens. The initial result, age 72. The initial projection shows that Bob can sustain his ideal lifestyle only until approximately age 72. That doesn't mean every Rand of his retirement capital disappears at age 72. It simply means that from that point, he can no longer fund all of his annual travel and his future vehicle purchases. And the liquidity graph actually shows us why. You see, Bob's liquid capital is depleted at approximately age 71 or 72. His living annuity drawdown is only 2.5%, so most of the funding pressure is being placed on his tax-free savings account, his unit trust, and his lump sum taken at retirement. And once those liquid investments have been depleted, his future holidays and vehicle purchases can no longer be funded. Bob must then start drawing substantially more from his living annuity merely to fund his normal monthly income. And his living annuity drawdown continues increasing until it reaches the maximum permitted rate of 17.5% at about age 77. There are therefore two different outcomes here. Bob's complete desired lifestyle can only be funded until approximately age 72, and his normal income can potentially continue until approximately age 77. The strategy that initially appeared to be extremely tax efficient, in Bob's case, has created a serious long-term liquidity problem. You see, paying very little tax in the first few years of retirement does not necessarily mean that you have built a tax-efficient retirement plan. So let's create a new scenario for Bob and begin testing some of the trade-offs we could consider. So what happens if we solve the problem by targeting a higher investment return? So I went and I changed the investment growth assumption for each investment from 10% to 12% per year. The result? Well, you see, Bob's ideal lifestyle could still only be sustained until age 72. You see, the higher return added precisely 0 years to the lifestyle he wanted. And the question is why? You see, because the underlying problem was not simply investment performance, it was liquidity, something overlooked in many retirement plans that I come across. You see, Bob is still drawing too little from his living annuity and placing way too much pressure on his accessible investments like his unit trust and his tax-free savings account. The higher return did help this remaining income last longer, so instead of reaching the 17.5% living annuity limit at age 77, he only reached it at approximately age 82 or 83. But his liquid capital was still depleted at age 72, so the complete lifestyle remained unaffordable from that point forward. A higher return can improve an investment outcome, but it cannot automatically repair a structurally flawed retirement plan, and this was one of the first 7 trade-offs we considered for Bob. And also, in all honesty, I don't believe it's actually responsible to build Bob's retirement plan around an assumed return of 12% per year. I prefer to plan using the original 10% assumption, and this would be a conversation between myself and Bob. So let's return to the 10% assumption and address the actual liquidity problem in Bob's retirement plan. You see, after testing different lump sum and living annuity combinations, the most effective combination in this particular example was to take 20% of the 7 million Rand pension fund as a lump sum and begin with a 10% living annuity drawdown, increasing that by 5% every year. The 20% lump sum amounts to about 1.4 million, and the tax payable on this lump sum in the model was about 240,000 Rand, or about 17% of the amount taken as a lump sum. Interestingly, that effective lump sum tax rate was still below the lowest marginal personal income tax rate of 18%. This is why it may sometimes be worth considering a retirement lump sum above the 550 tax-free amount. But that decision cannot be based only on how much tax you pay on the day you retire. We need to actually consider the effect across your entire retirement plan. With the 20% lump sum and the 10% starting living annuity drawdown, Bob's ideal lifestyle could now potentially be sustained until age 79. And this is an improvement of 7 years, even though we returned the investment growth assumption back to 10%. You see, the liquidity problem was now resolved in his plan, and the living annuity capital is now being depleted more quickly because Bob is drawing more income from it. But the larger living annuity income means that less money needs to be withdrawn from his liquid accessible investments every month. And that gives his tax-free savings account, the unit trust, and the money he commuted far more breathing room into the future. It allows Bob to retain significantly more liquid capital later on in retirement. Now, withdrawals from a living annuity are taxable as income. By comparison, when money is withdrawn from a discretionary unit trust, the full withdrawal is not necessarily taxable as income. So depending on the investments and the client's circumstances, tax generally applies to the taxable components of the return rather than every rand withdrawn. You see, by preserving more of the liquid capital, Bob allows his potentially more tax-efficient source of future income to remain invested for longer. You see, once again, the improvement in his financial plan didn't come from chasing a higher return. It came from a better mixture of a drawdown strategy, tax, and liquidity planning in his retirement plan. Now, the next area we considered was Bob's asset classification, something I also find often overlooked in retirement. Now, asset classification asks, where is a person's wealth concentrated? Is it held in investment assets that can generate an income, or is it tied up in lifestyle assets such as a home or vehicles? Now, when we include Bob's 4 million rand home, approximately 29% of his total wealth is concentrated in his property. Now, the property provides Bob with somewhere to live, and it is assumed to appreciate and increase over time at about 5%. But while he continues occupying it, that value doesn't provide accessible capital or cash flow to fund his retirement. And after discussing this with Bob said he would actually consider downscaling in retirement. He identified a smaller property in the city where he intended to retire, and the plan assumed that he could realize 4 million from the existing property after his state agent commissions and other costs, and the replacement property would cost approximately about 2.5 million, including transfer costs and attorney's fees. It would also be a smaller, single-story lock-up and go property with lower maintenance requirements for Bob. See, and this would release 1.5 million in liquid capital that could be injected into his financial plan. Now, when we added the 1.5 million to the financial plan and assumed that it be invested into a unit trust growing at 10% per year, Bob now had more liquid capital available. And this meant we could reduce his starting living annuity drawdown from 10% to 8%. And this increased the projected sustainability of his desired lifestyle from potentially age 79 to about age 85. That's another 6 years added. Liquidity was also significantly improved, and this was not free money. Bob had to exchange a larger home for a smaller one, but the trade-off released capital that had previously been locked inside a lifestyle asset and allowed it to start contributing directly to Bob's retirement plan. The next trade-off concerns how spending may change throughout retirement. Now, retirement is often divided into 3 broad phases. You've got the go-go phase, you've got the slow-go phase, and then you've got the no-go phase. Now, during the go-go phase, a retiree may still be extremely active, traveling, socializing, and spending money on experiences. During the slow-go phase, traveling and discretionary spending may gradually start to reduce. And then during the no-go phase, mobility and activity may become more limited, so discretionary living expenses may reduce even further, although medical and support costs could increase like frail care. Now, we modeled these 3 phases for Bob as follows. During the go-go phase, he would require 50,000 Rand per month after tax until age 75. During the slow-go phase, that amount would drop to 40,000 Rand per month until age 85. And during the no-go phase, it would reduce to about 30,000 Rand per month. Importantly, these expenses do not remain fixed at those amounts. Each amount was still assumed to increase by 5% every year. And because Bob would require less income later in retirement, we could now reduce his starting living annuity drawdown from 8% down to 7%, and again increasing this by 5% every year. His desired lifestyle now could potentially be sustained until about age 91. That's another 6 years in his retirement plan. The liquidity position also remained very healthy, and at this stage Bob could still fund all 3 planned vehicle purchases and the 100,000 Rand annual traveling goals until age 85. The outcome improved because the plan was no longer assuming that Bob would maintain exactly the same lifestyle of 50,000 Rand after tax throughout retirement. However, there was one major expense that we still needed to treat differently in Bob's retirement plan. Now, one 5,000 Rand monthly expense removed approximately 4 years from Bob's retirement plan. It wasn't a new expense. It was an expense that had originally been increased at the wrong rate. You see, Bob's living expenses were assumed to increase by 5% per year in his retirement plan, but 5,000 Rand of his monthly budget was specifically allocated to medical aid. And instead of escalating that 5,000 Rand at 5%, we modeled it increasing at 8.5% every year. And that single adjustment reduced the projected sustainability of Bob's desired lifestyle from age 91 down to age 87. That's approximately 4 years or 48 monthly income payments removed from Bob's retirement plan. The point is not that every medical scheme will increase by exactly 8.5%. That was the planning assumption we used in this particular case. The point is that medical expenses may behave very differently from general living expenses. Ignoring that difference can make a retirement projection look considerably healthier than it really is. You see, building the plan without making appropriate provision for medical expenses would not have given Bob a realistic picture. So we accepted the reduction from age 91 to age 87 and considered which lifestyle goals Bob would actually be willing to adjust in his retirement plan. You see, retirement planning, such as all things in life, is ultimately about making choices. See, Bob did not want to remove the medical aid assumption simply to make the projection look better because that would be unrealistic. Instead, he reconsidered 2 of his discretionary goals. First off, he decided that he did not need the 3rd vehicle purchase at age 85. The plan would therefore only provide for 2 vehicle purchases, one at age 65 and another at age 75. Secondly, instead of spending 100,000 Rand on travel every single year, Bob decided that he would travel every 2nd year, or simply take that amount down to 50,000 Rand a year. You see, he was an avid camper and he already had a bakkie and camping equipment, which allowed him to travel without relying exclusively on things like hotels and more expensive accommodation. And this was not a decision to stop traveling. It was a decision to reduce the frequency and cost of the goal. You see, with these adjustments, Bob's ideal lifestyle could now potentially be sustained until approximately age 94. That's an improvement of 7 years from the previous age 87. Importantly, he still retained sufficient liquid capital later on in retirement. You see, Bob had consciously prioritized medical security and long-term income over a 3rd vehicle and annual travel. And then there was one final trade-off I wanted Bob to consider. That was the choice between a living annuity and a life annuity. Now, in simple terms, a living annuity keeps your retirement capital invested into the market and allows you to draw an income from it. It provides income flexibility, and any capital remaining when you die can generally pass on to your beneficiaries. However, you carry the investment risk and the risk that your capital may not support your income for the rest of your life. With a life annuity, you exchange a portion of your retirement capital for an income paid by an insurer for the rest of your life. And this transfers the longevity risk to the insurer and provides greater income certainty for you. However, it generally provides less flexibility and may leave little or no capital for your beneficiaries, depending on the options that you selected. Now, I will cover the differences between a living annuity and a life annuity in more detail in a separate video. But for Bob, however, we needed to see what combining the two options would actually do to his overall retirement plan. And at the time when this case study was modeled with Bob, we used the annuity rates reflected in this comparison, which you can get from Masthead. We assumed, and at this point in time, that Bob was unmarried as he was previously divorced and therefore comfortable purchasing a single life annuity, which means that if he were to pass away, the annuity wouldn't go to a second life. The option included a 10-year guaranteed period with the income increasing by 5% every year. We used the best rate we could get from an insurer, which provided about 5,424 Rand per month for every 1 million Rand allocated to the life annuity. Now that income would continue for the rest of Bob's life. So after taking the 20% retirement lump sum, we allocated half of Bob's remaining retirement capital to a living annuity and the other half into this life annuity. And this created a balance between flexibility and certainty for Bob. The living annuity portion remained invested in the market and could potentially be left to Bob's beneficiaries if he passed away. The life annuity portion provided a guaranteed lifetime income increasing at 5% every year. This extended the projected sustainability of Bob's desired lifestyle potentially from age 94 to approximately age 96. See, that added another 2 years to Bob's retirement plan. There is, however, a significant trade-off. Bob no longer owns the capital used to purchase the life annuity. If he dies after the 10-year guaranteed period, the capital will not be available to his beneficiaries. But in chatting to Bob, he's mentioned to me that his greatest concern was that his children should never have to support him financially. And it was for that reason that he was comfortable sacrificing a portion of his capital in exchange for greater income certainty. Now let's recap and summarize Bob's retirement journey. The initial plan sustained Bob's ideal lifestyle until age 72, although his 50,000 Rand per month income could potentially be sustained until age 77. Increasing the return assumption to 12% didn't add a single year to his ideal lifestyle. It remained sustainable only until age 72, although his income, the 50,000 Rand, could at least be sustained up until potentially age 82 or 83. Returning to a 10% investment return and taking a 20% lump sum and increasing the living annuity drawdown to 10% moved the outcome all the way to age 79. That added 7 years. Downscaling Bob's property and releasing 1.5 million moved it to age 85. That added 6 years. Accounting for the go-go, slow-go and no-go phases moved it all the way to age 91. That added another 6 years. And escalating the medical aid component at 8.5% reduced the outcome back to age 87. That actually removed 4 years. Removing the third vehicle and changing annual travel to travel every second year moved it to age 94. That added 7 years. And finally, allocating half of the remaining retirement capital to a life annuity moved the outcome to age 96. That added a further 2 years. Now you see, we started with a plan that could sustain Bob's ideal lifestyle until age 72. We ended with one that could potentially sustain it until age 96. That is an improvement of approximately 24 years. And this is what I refer to as the advice gap. It's the difference between applying a simplified retirement rule and building a plan around the interaction between tax, liquidity, lifestyle, assets, drawdowns, and longevity. Now, at the end of the day, this remains a projected retirement plan. It's obviously not a guarantee of future outcomes. Investment returns in real life obviously differ from the assumptions we sometimes use in the plans. That's why we have to keep on monitoring it, and things like tax legislation, inflation, annuity range, all of this, along with Bob's personal circumstances and lifestyle, may also change. But having been involved in hundreds, if not thousands of these plans through my work on this particular financial planning software, I've seen how valuable it can be for retirees to understand their options before making permanent decisions. Now, I can hear some of you sitting there going, "Oh, Tiaan, I don't have 10 million Rand. So this video is pointless. Why did I even sit through this?" Now, that might be very true. You may not have 10 million Rand. But it doesn't mean that there aren't decisions in your own financial plan that you could begin addressing today that could have a significant impact when you get to retirement. This case study I really wanted to do because I wanted to show how this 4% rule in retirement, where people just say, make sure you draw less than 4%, is such a simplistic way of looking at retirement, and there's so much context missing. And some of this context are questions like, well, where's your capital invested? How much of it is liquid? How will your withdrawals be taxed? Do you own a property or other assets that could be downscaled? Do you have other forms of income that you could rely on? How will your expenses change later on retirement? How quickly will your medical expenses increase? What goals in your plan are essential and what would you be willing to adjust? Do you prioritize leaving capital to your beneficiaries, or is a guaranteed income important to you? And these questions cannot be answered by one drawdown percentage. If you are already retired and you are invested in a living annuity investment, I really think you want to watch my separate video that I did on how the underlying portfolio and sequence of returns can affect the sustainability of your income that you draw from your living annuity. I'll link that video in this video's description. And if you'd like any assistance putting together your own detailed retirement plan, my contact details are in the video description as well. If you found this case study useful, please like the video, subscribe to Tian Finance, and share with somebody approaching retirement. Again, I do technical long format content because I don't think financial planning is as simple and straightforward as we might think. As always, this video is provided for general information and educational purposes only and does not constitute personal financial advice, investment, or tax advice whatsoever. Before making any retirement decision, please consider consulting an appropriately qualified financial and tax professional who can assess your individual circumstances. Till next time, see you soon. Bye-bye.